Sometimes, a single act of kindness can rewrite your entire life. This is the story of Ethan, a poor street boy from London, who gave his only meal to a stranger, and in return, received a destiny beyond imagination. The sky was gray, and a thin mist floated over the streets of London. Children hurried home, holding their parents' hands. But one small figure walked alone, a boy, Ethan, no more than 12, dragging an old sack behind him. His shoes were torn, his jacket too thin for the cold. He moved from bin to bin, collecting cans and bottles. People passed by without noticing him, as if he was invisible. Ethan worked all day. He wasn't lazy or hopeless, just forgotten. By sunset, his small sack was full. He took it to a recycling shop and earned a few coins, barely enough for a little box of food, a loaf of bread, some soup, and a red apple. He smiled faintly. At least I'll sleep with a full stomach tonight. As Ethan walked through the dimly lit street toward the abandoned house he called home, he noticed something unusual. Under a flickering streetlight sat an old woman, shivering, her hands trembling. People walked past her, not even looking. Ethan hesitated. He had only enough food for himself. But then he remembered what hunger felt like, that deep, empty ache. He slowly walked over and said softly, "Ma'am, you look cold. Would you like to share some food with me?" The woman lifted her face, her eyes tired but kind. She whispered, "You don't even know me, child." Ethan smiled, tearing the bread in half. "You don't need to know someone to be kind." They ate quietly together, a boy with nothing, and a woman who looked like she'd lost everything. What Ethan didn't know was that this old woman was Margaret Hale, one of London's most powerful billionaires. A widow with no family, no children, and a heart shattered by loneliness. She had disguised herself that day to see how people treated the poor. But nobody stopped for her, except Ethan. As she watched the boy leave, clutching his half-eaten bread, tears filled her eyes. She whispered, "The world still has kindness left." That night she asked her driver to quietly follow him. He led her to an abandoned corner near the railway, where Ethan lived alone. She saw him cover himself with an old blanket and curl up beside a candlelight. "He has nothing, yet he shared everything," she murmured. The next morning, a black Rolls-Royce stopped near the same street corner. Ethan froze, staring at it. A man in a suit stepped out. "Are you Ethan?" He nodded nervously. "Mrs. Hale would like to meet you." Inside the mansion, Ethan's eyes widened. Chandeliers, marble floors, gold decor, a world he had only seen in dreams. Mrs. Hale smiled gently from her armchair. "You don't remember me, do you?" Ethan looked confused. She laughed softly. "Last night you shared your food with me." His mouth fell open in shock. She continued, "You had nothing, but your heart gave more than most rich people ever could. Let me help you, Ethan. You deserve a chance." For the first time, he felt seen. Mrs. Hale enrolled Ethan in a good school, hired tutors, bought him clothes, and gave him a small room in her mansion. But she didn't spoil him, she guided him. She taught him discipline, business, and empathy. Every day, he studied hard, remembering the cold streets he came from. Years passed. Ethan grew into a young man, sharp, well-spoken, and kind-hearted. He started helping poor children with his own small savings. Mrs. Hale often watched from her window, smiling proudly. "He's the son I never had," she whispered one evening. Time, however, is never kind. Mrs. Hale grew weaker with age. One night, she called Ethan to her bedside. Her voice was faint but calm. "Ethan, my dear, you gave me something no one else ever did, hope. When the world forgot me, you remembered me. Ethan held her hand tightly, tears falling silently. You saved me, Mrs. Hale. I should be thanking you. She smiled gently. Promise me that when I'm gone, you'll use what I give you to help others, to give back what was once given to you. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. That night, she passed away peacefully. Days later, Ethan was called to her lawyer's office. There, he heard words that changed his life forever. According to Mrs. Hale's will, her entire estate, including properties, business shares, and savings, now belongs to Ethan Miller. He sat in silence, shocked, overwhelmed. She had made him her legal heir. Years later, Ethan Miller became one of London's most admired philanthropists. He built shelters for homeless children, funded education centers, and launched the Margaret Hale Foundation. At an event, standing under a bright stage light, he said, Once, I was a boy collecting trash on these very streets. But one kind woman changed everything, not with money, but with love. Let's be that person for someone else. The crowd stood in silence, then applause filled the hall. That night, as he walked home through the same old street, he stopped under the same flickering light, placed a loaf of bread there, and whispered, Thank you. Kindness costs nothing, but it can change everything. Ethan's story reminds us that no good deed ever goes unseen. Because sometimes one simple act is enough to turn fate itself.